I'm Nurse Jessica Seitz, along with Nurse Erica. We're Nurses Uncorked, the podcast that takes nursing facts with nursing comedy and makes a little cocktail out of it.
We want to give a big trigger warning prior to this week's podcast episode. It does involve traumatic birth and a fetal demise. If you are pregnant, you may want to consider skipping this episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Nurses Uncorked. This is Nurse Jessica Seitz along with Nurse Erica, and we are back again today with a very, very interesting and sad story. But before we get into all of that and talk about, you know, what the latest news that has everybody stunned, we're going to let Nurse Erica jump in here and do our weekly drink of the week quickly because I really want to get onto this story here. But this is part of our podcast because we would not be Nurses Uncorked if we didn't uncork something.
That's right.
What you got there, Erica?
So I thought I would piggyback on the last cocktail, which was your favorite wine, Chardonnay. And yes, just talk about my favorite wine, which is Moscato. I love a sweet wine. I'm not a big wine connoisseur, but I love a sweet wine. And I don't even care what brand it is, what vineyard it is. I don't know that much about wine, but these are some of my favorites. The Cupcake Vineyard makes a great Moscato too. Yeah. Hand me Moscato anytime and I'll be happy.
Back in the day, I started out with white Zinfandel. It's like
I used to drink that, and then someone turned me on to Moscato.
Most people start off as wine drinkers really, really sweet until they progressively branch out their taste buds, if you will. Well, cheers to your Moscato. Even though I will say, I think I turned you into a Chardonnay fan too, but
I did enjoy the Chardonnay. I did.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's drier, but it's not bad. Yeah. All right, let's. I'm gonna let Nurse Erica talk about this horrible story that's out in the nursing, well, really everywhere world right now. What's happening, Erica?
Yeah, a few days ago, we were, I think, all stunned when there was a press conference given in Atlanta, Georgia, alleging that a baby in the process of a mom giving birth at Southern Regional Hospital, Atlanta, Georgia, that the baby was decapitated during the procedure. The attorney for the mom and dad gave a long, lengthy press conference, and it was hard to listen to and to watch. I had never heard anything like this before. And so basically what they're saying is that mom, who is 20 years old, dad is 21 years old. This was their first child. Mom was 37 weeks along and had gone to the hospital about 10 in the morning or so, 10 or 11 after the water broke. They said that by 8:30 p.m. she was dilated. And then shortly thereafter, they noticed a shoulder dystocia. And this part is a little vague. It says from about 8:40 p.m. through midnight. I guess they were trying to deal with the shoulder dystocia. And of course, you know way more about that than I do. That's your specialty.
Oh yeah, I have a lot to say, but we're going to let Erica finish the story details.
Yeah, so by about midnight, because everything they tried was unsuccessful, they ended up taking her for an emergency C-section. And reportedly, when they opened her up, they found and delivered a torso and limbs with no head, and found the head wedged in the vaginal canal, the birth canal, which they said mom then delivered the head vaginally.
Yeah.
And it gets worse from there, as if that isn't horrifying enough. The parents are alleging it's beyond. Yeah. The parents are alleging that they were not told. They were told that the baby died, obviously, but they were not told about the decapitation. They said that they, obviously requested to hold the baby, which is typical after a fetal demise, and that they were denied that. And eventually, after quite some time, they were allowed to just see the baby through a window, and that the baby had been, what's it called? When you wrap them up
tightly. Yeah. Swaddled.
Yeah. Swaddled. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And that the head was propped there. And so they never knew that happened. So
they tried to make it appear as if as if it was still intact, like, and put the blanket up high around around the neck.
That's what they're alleging. And then they apparently found out like 3 or 4 days later from the funeral home, not from the doctor, but from the funeral home, who obviously received the body and then was obligated to report it to the county medical examiner, which the hospital was obligated to do as well, but they did not, allegedly. And then the parents found out that way. And so now there is a lawsuit. In that part, I think that the funeral home probably assumed that was already common knowledge, and probably was like, since the baby, had such a difficult delivery, we're going to, present it. That's what I probably think happened. And that's how that information came to be. And they are also saying that they were urged or almost tried to push them into having the baby cremated. That was another thing that they stated. Yes.
Yeah, allegation, yes, was that they were trying to say that it wouldn't be covered to do a burial, that it would be too expensive.
Well, I think they had requested an autopsy, and they were allegedly told that they don't meet criteria for the free autopsy, which, I mean, if ever there was a coroner's case, this would be it, right?
Exactly.
Just a lot of different components to this. And there are nurses named in the lawsuit, which is, a whole other concern, right? I've heard about 6 nurses that have been named in the suit. They're being accused of gross negligence for failing to follow proper procedures once it became known that a shoulder dystocia had occurred, and that the nurses owed an independent duty to the mother and baby that they failed. Now, it doesn't go into any more detail than that, but it will be interesting to see what happens as the story unfolds.
Definitely. So I think the majority of what we've heard so far has been from, the mom and the dad's attorney. He's the one that, has come out and had the press conference and, was a pretty detailed, press conference from, explaining as best that the attorney could as to what's happened and why they are suing. Now, from what I have read, the only thing that statement that the hospital has made, according to the hospital, they said they could not speak much on it. They were trying to explain to people that the physician, who I will say is a female, and she's been a physician since 2000. So this obviously is from what I would say, an experienced OBGYN that has 23 years under her belt. So not like not a newbie, not somebody fresh, not somebody a resident or something. I mean, this is a doctor that's been practicing for quite some time. The hospital made it a point to say that the physician is not employed by the hospital, which for us is kind of common knowledge. I mean, the majority of the time, physicians are really just
contracted.
Granted, they have privileges at a hospital, but they're not paid.
Right, they're not employees directly of the hospital, unless they're like a hospitalist or an intensivist. than they are. But that's very common for like an outside OBGYN group to be contracted and have privileges at the hospital. So when the hospital made that statement, I think it was really it was kind of deceptive, and maybe to give the impression to the general public that doesn't know any different that they have taken these huge steps and, and they're no longer employed there. Well, they weren't really employed there to begin with.
Right. I think that's part of them. They are saying that they assume no wrongdoing, the hospital. In this case, and really the only fact that I read that they or what they're saying is fact, allegedly according to them, was that the only thing that they could report was that the baby had passed away in utero prior to the decapitation. That is a statement that the hospital made. Aside from that, they were not willing to give any other information because it's ongoing right now and collecting, information. And that's really the only details that we've gotten from the hospital side. Now,
and that didn't come out right away. At first, they just said, we deny all allegations. And then it was a couple of days when suddenly the hospital said, well, it was actually what would be known as a fetal demise, that the baby had already passed in utero, which is a whole different can of worms. And actually, when I first heard about this, I reached out to you because this is your specialty. Yes. And I said, Jessica, what the heck? Have you ever heard of this? How could this possibly happen? And you had a very interesting take. You were the first one that I heard it from before the hospital ever even came out with that information. So why don't you tell us?
When you brought this up to me, it was like the day it came out, and I had not heard about it yet because Erica always gets the news first. I mean... prior to anybody. And I'm like, no, I haven't heard. And she was just like, you haven't? And I'm like, no, what? So my husband was there too. He's an OBGYN. Just so you guys have some background, if you don't know, I was a bedside labor and delivery nurse for 22 years before I left bedside. So L&D is all that I've done. So Erica, gave me the facts of the story. Explaining all of this to me. And I watched the video that was out. And immediately I had a lot of questions that as a L&D nurse, it didn't make sense to me in the way that it was stated by the attorney. And that is at no fault of his own, because a lot of this is complicating. People are not... specialists, they're not medical professionals in regards to this, but what I will say, let's kind of start from the beginning here, kind of take it step by step. So you have to think this is it's sad for anybody, but this was the mom's first baby. She's young, the father's young. It's 37 weeks, which is a few weeks early, but not preterm or anything like that. But usually if a baby is going to be LGA or large for gestational age, if you deliver a few weeks before, that usually puts a lot of it's more on your side, that because that's when the baby gets a lot of their adipose tissue, is in the last final weeks. They do all their developing and they really start to pack on the pounds at the end. So I will say usually you're not as concerned about an LGA baby at 37 weeks, unless there's been some prior findings. Maybe the mom's fundus had been measuring bigger than normal for weeks on end, or maybe the ultrasounds at 34, 35, 36 weeks were showing that the baby was measuring bigger. From what I'm understanding, I do not believe that, or at least they're not stating that there was any indication or anything like that documented at that point. Now, whether that comes out later, that who knows. But from what my understanding was, they went into the hospital. Mom was in early labor and went in, to have a baby. So what Erica was mentioning, a minute ago was immediately, actually, I'll say the first red flag was when I heard the attorney say that there was a shoulder dystocia that began at, what was it, 8:20? Whatever.
8:40 p.m.
Okay, 8:40, and that the baby was not delivered until 12.
And do you want to maybe
a.m.
tell people what a shoulder dystocia is? They may not know.
Yes. So it's very common for, first of all, for a prima gravida, first-time mom, to sometimes push up to 2, sometimes 3 hours. That can happen, as long as we're seeing some descent, some progress. They'll let the mom continue, to push as long as the baby is not showing signs of distress. But there's a lot of factors that go into evaluating continuing to push. You're checking the mom along the way. You're feeling for whether is the baby just growing, for lack of a better word for people, like a cone head. If you've ever seen babies that come out and they look all goofy because they're trying to fit. But a lot of times, you'll think that the baby's descending, but then you assess and you feel the head, and you've grown this much of edema on the top of the head, and the baby's head actually isn't moving at all. Like their station is not descending. So there's definitely a lot of things to take into account as a mom is pushing. You've got to watch the tracing. You have to make sure that there is some type of progress happening. Is the baby ever actually getting low enough to the point that, yes, maybe you could possibly help assist the baby in delivery, which is what we're hearing happened at one point, at some point. I don't think they've said the time frame of when that assistance happened, but having that said, a shoulder dystocia basically is when the fetal head is delivered and the shoulders get stuck behind the mom's pubic bone. So shoulder dystocia, meaning shoulders can't fit. You would never have a shoulder dystocia. It's an emergency situation. So when a baby hits the air, basically, they immediately, their circulation starts trying to shift to their fetal circulation, where they're trying to breathe outside air. So once a baby's head is delivered, it's a matter of life or death, literally, because you're basically at a state of hypoxia for the baby. There's cord compression. The umbilical cord can be compressed. The baby's trying to breathe regular air, but can't. So there's literally minutes, just like you hear anybody else that in an adult, if you've done CPR, 3 to 4 minutes, that's when brain damage can occur. So we're thinking, the same thing. So to hear the attorney say that there was a shoulder dystocia from 8:40 till delivery time, I think he probably meant pushing started and, from being complete until delivery. So I think that was just kind of misstated slightly. I would assume that will come out later, that the whether I think it was a vacuum was put on the baby's head at a certain time. If I had to guesstimate, it's not going to be.
According to the complaint, they said that the OBGYN applied excessive traction and then negatively or negligently failed to do the C-section in a timely manner.
That's very possible. These are all allegations. Who knows? Like I said, there's a lot of different factors. Did she put there's so many different things. Like if you do a vacuum delivery, we're taught as an L&D nurse, you monitor, is the head coming down? Is it guided and actually coming out? Is the suction on the baby's head popping off? Meaning, you're trying to guide the head down and you're using so much force with the vacuum that it's not bulging, and you actually end up. So there's a limited amount. We count them. We say 1 pop off, two pop offs. Usually you start getting to three pop offs with the vacuum, and it's like, hey, okay, either we need to make a decision here and switch what we're doing, maybe do a section, get another doctor in the room, because if we're going to attempt another another pull. Like all these things should be already coming up in your mind. This is going to be a difficult delivery. It's right there, and I've got to get it out. Let me get another physician in here in case this is a horrible shoulder dystocia, because these are all, now at this point, those are all signs. No idea from what they're saying that the physician did not call for backup. Whether that's true or not, but that's what we're hearing, was that the physician did this. The reports do state that the force that the physician put on this baby was so intense that the bones in the face of the baby were broken. The skull was broken and fractured in multiple spots, which, with the shoulder dystocia, majority of times what we see, when you do have to put that amount of traction and you put that much pressure on the shoulders, is you can have a clavicle break. A lot of times they force the clavicle to break in order to get the baby delivered. You can have nerve damage. The baby can end up losing all mobility or feeling in one arm or the other arm. They can end up obviously having some type of neurological deficit if the hypoxia lasted long enough. So there definitely is a list of things that can happen. The mom can end up with a horrible 4th-degree laceration. A lot of times they make that happen on purpose, where they have, I know it's hard, just thinking about that for her, so that they can make as much room as possible. You can end up damaging the mom's bladder because there's so much pressure put on the bladder with the force of pulling. They can crack their tailbone. I mean, the list goes on and on. So who knows how long the actual shoulder dystocia lasted, but at some point, the physician, from what I understand, the head was out and the shoulders were stuck no matter what this physician attempted to do, which I don't know what maneuvers were used, because we're not hearing all of that. But when a baby gets stuck in a position like that of a shoulder dystocia, usually the physician starts calling out different maneuvers for the nurses to do, which would be one of which you lay the head of the bed completely flat and you pull the mom's legs way back, because that allows for the most room in the pelvis to kind of open up the pelvis to attempt to get the baby out. If that doesn't relieve it, they'll usually tell you to do suprapubic pressure, which basically is the nurse literally jumps up on the bed. I've done this many times. You straddle the mother. If it's bad enough, I mean, you literally, if you can envision having your butt in the mom's face and you're over her belly. So it's like you're facing the doctor, kind of eye to eye with the doctor. And you're taking your fist and you're basically, I'm kicking the microphone here. You're basically trying to rotate the baby's shoulder under the pelvic bone. So you're putting so much pressure on the mom's pubic bone where like the baby's shoulder would be, to get it to rotate. At the same time, the doctor should be telling you, put more pressure on the right side or the left side, because they can feel internally and they can feel which shoulder is the one that's really stuck. They should be trying to get their hand in there and deliver the shoulder as you're pushing and trying to kind of rotate. Having that said, if all these maneuvers are failing, a maneuver of last resort is one that has not been used tons of times, because this is it's a situation you don't want to be in. So now you're down to saving the baby's life. You've got minutes. So there's a maneuver called a Zavanelli, which is named after the doctor that came up with it. And it's when you cannot get this kid out from below. It's over. You've tried everything that you possibly can. And the only way now to save the kid is to try to push it back up into the abdomen. So you try to flex the baby's head down, put the head down to the chin as much as you can, and literally push and rotate the baby back up into the abdomen, in order to rush back for a stat C-section. So that's the understanding that we have that happened, was that the physician attempted a Zavanelli maneuver. They went back for a stat C-section. I I don't know if you have it, but there was a length of time from when they did say this, from when this stat C-section was called till delivery.
They said delivery was 11 minutes after midnight.
Okay. And I think they called the stat like before midnight. Yeah.
I thought it was right about midnight.
So, I mean, 11 minutes, I mean,
is that good or bad?
That's a long time. I mean, with hypoxia and not.
Yeah, but is it, I mean, when they say stat C-section, what is the average from saying it to baby out?
Oh gosh. I mean, in the ideal perfect circumstances, you could get that kid out within a few minutes. I mean, if you have anesthesia there and available, you have an OR team ready to go, your hospital is set up and always has a stat room open. So you have a physician that is quick and knows how to do a section fast. All of these, I mean, I've seen it happen in 3 to 4 minutes from the time a stat is called till the baby comes out.
Wow.
So it can happen. You know, it totally depends on what the circumstances were here. I mean, we don't know. Did they put her to sleep? Were they able to just chop off her epidural quickly? And I'm assuming they probably put mom to sleep. But these are all things that'll come out later on.
And side note, can I interject?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me if you agree. But I know when I was pregnant a long time ago and having my kids, and I was trying to decide which hospital I would be delivering at, I wanted to make sure that they had the OR on the same floor as labor and delivery, because not all hospitals do. And can you imagine having to wait for an elevator in an emergency situation like that?
And that's things that people don't think to ask sometimes, you know?
Right.
Where at the hospital I was at, yes, it was literally, you could go either way on the hallway. You could get to the OR and it, you know, our L&D was like an L shape and each side in the middle had access to the OR. So you could be there, you know, within seconds. And we always had anesthesia was there 24 hours a day. So I don't know the size of this hospital. I don't know how many deliveries they do a year. I don't know, you know, what the case may be. But even if it is a small hospital, depending on how well things were communicated up the chain of command, they should have already been calling in a team just in case, because of how the situation was going. I mean, you have a mom that's pushing 3 hours. They're going to attempt a vacuum delivery if they can. I mean, these are all things that you would want a team already there on standby. But, you know, who knows? This will be very interesting to find out. When I hear about the physician causing a decapitation because of the force that she inflicted on this baby's head, immediately for me, I think about, this is essentially a full-term kid. To have maybe a preterm baby that is very fragile, they have no adipose tissue, their skin is vascularized, it's very thin, the cervix can easily clamp down quickly. It would not be that far-fetched in that case to possibly have something like that occur. Now, I have seen many times a shoulder dystocia that the force that is put onto this baby's head is extreme, that you would think that their head would literally snap off, for lack of a better phrase. I mean, you think, how is that possible? But if you think in an everyday scenario, babies are designed to basically, I mean, not to have a shoulder dystocia, but they do. The physicians pull down on the kid's head to get the shoulders out. Like, there is a lot of force that can be put on a baby, and they are fine. So to fathom, for me as a nurse that did this for 22 years, that a physician could possibly put that much force on a kid's. Now, I can think about, I get that the skull might be broke from pressure of whatever instrument they used. The face might be broke. Maybe they put forceps and the forceps were on the side of the cheekbones. I get all that. Broken clavicle bones, nerve damage from it being compressed. But to actually, for me to visualize and think that a physician could possibly put that much force that it could cause a decapitation is not, I have never heard of that in all of my years. I have never seen that. I don't really know of any other stories here in the U.S. that have come out like that. That is a crazy, crazy event. So immediately my mind thought, what if, and this is my thinking, what if that kid ended up so wedged in there beyond the point of being able to then deliver the body from the abdomen? Like, it is so locked in there in that pubic bone that then when the physician tried to then deliver the baby via C-section, it still couldn't get the kid out the other way. Now you're trying to go the opposite way. There's been cases like that I've gone, and there's other maneuvers. A nurse can go down as sterile as possible, and literally they say they'll call for somebody to push from below. So the nurse goes under the sterile drapes, and we literally go inside the mom like an exam, push the head up. You literally lock hands with the physician. It's kind of creepy, and you pop the kids. It's like you meet their hand inside the mom. It's the weirdest thing the first time you do it. But that way you can push up so that they can get the kid out. Now, my thinking was, is it possible that this kid was so wedged, and by the time that they tried, the baby had already, probably passed, and maybe now this was a flip of switching to, now it's time to save mom's life, because you do have two patients. You've got mom and you've got baby. If it's been this long, I mean, you're thinking the time the shoulder dystocia took, with no oxygen, the time that it took to try to push the kid back up in there and do a Zavanelli, the time it took to get to the OR, set up for a stat C-section, try to get the kid out, and then they can't get the kid out, and maybe they're feeling no pulse, the umbilical cord, there's nothing, and they know that this kid has passed and they still can't get the kid out. What if the physician had to make a decision at that point? How do we deliver this kid so that the mom's uterus doesn't start bleeding? How do we need to get the uterus to contract down? Maybe the patient started bleeding out and had to make a critical decision at that point. I'm not saying that this is just another way of looking at it. This is a possibility. And I could be very wrong. It's very possible that, hey, maybe this doctor got superhuman strength because her adrenaline was so pumped and scared that she did cause that. But if she did cause a decapitation during the shoulder dystocia, that in my mind the head would have been delivered, and that if you cause that much force that the kid was decapitated, it's just a different way of looking at it. I am very, very interested to find out later on as this comes out if my thinking is right. And I'm not saying that this physician is innocent or not innocent. I don't know. I don't know. This is all going to come out eventually. But maybe that is what happened. So it's just a different way of thinking about how to look at that, and seeing that maybe it was had to be done, and the baby, that would coincide with what the hospital is saying, that the baby had already passed before the decapitation. I don't know. What do you think,
And
Erica?
Also, you had mentioned also that if it was a fetal demise and the baby was already dead at some point, the baby would be very hypotonic, right? There wouldn't be the tone there, and that you could theoretically, even though we've never heard of this really ever happening before, you could theoretically see how that would happen easier than a healthy fetus, right?
I will say, yes, totally. I will say, for any physician that's an OBGYN, and I talked to my husband about this in detail, a shoulder dystocia is their worst fear.
Worst nightmare.
It's awful. It's a scary thing for a doctor. It's something that you don't want to be a part of, but you know that it happens. And the key is quickly doing the maneuvers that we're taught, trying to alleviate whatever you can and getting that kid delivered. Having that said, my husband's been a physician for a long time. He has never had to do a Zavanelli. He's never even witnessed a Zavanelli maneuver done. That's how, and that's that he's worked at one of the busiest hospitals in Florida. So he has delivered many, many, many thousands of babies. That's how rare this particular scenario is.
Wow.
Yeah, there's just not tons of data on it. There's not a lot of cases because Zavanelli doesn't happen that often because you don't want it to. I mean, you want to avoid that last resort measure above anything else. You want to get that kid out.
Yeah. What is your opinion of the nurses that have been named in the lawsuit accused of gross negligence for not following proper procedures? Does anything come to mind that they could have not done that they should have done from a nurse?
I mean, I think if you're really concerned that something bad is happening to your patient, absolutely you should try to go up the chain of command. You need to have your charge nurse step in the room. You need to have another nurse. Well, I think they did have plenty of nurses in there, but your charge nurse needs to be aware. The charge nurse needs to then probably reach out to the AOD or whoever is in charge of the hospital at that time. Maybe call another physician into the room so to get another set of eyes on there. That's what I was
thinking, that even if the doctor refuses to call for backup for another physician, the nurse should, in a situation like that, in my opinion, do it anyway, because you need to advocate for the patient.
Yeah, you can call whoever the hospitalist might be, or if there happens to be another OB that is on the floor there seeing another patient, anything. Get another set of eyeballs on there, another opinion. Of course, nurses need to be their patient's advocate. If these nurses did nothing, then I can understand why they're possibly implicating them. But I also find that hard to believe. When we have a situation like this, all hands are on deck, at least where I worked. You had every nurse that was possible in that room. You called for neonatology because you knew you were going to have a compromised baby coming out. You wanted to have NICU team there. You would anesthesia there in case you need to roll back for a C-section. Like, you get all hands on deck. But bottom line is, if you felt like this was a dangerous scenario, always listen to your gut, always follow your instincts. Physicians are not God. They're not the end all be all. They are human beings just like anybody else. And if you feel like they're making a mistake or they're stepping out of bounds, it's your license that's at stake. It's you that can be ultimately held accountable as well. So you do have to look out for yourself. So I would say follow chain of command. Maybe in the ideal situation, before it got to that point, ask the physician if can they step outside with you for a second, have a discussion, prior to even getting to that point of tugging on this kid's head. Just go with your gut. Have another nurse come in and say, there's a lot of molding, there's a lot of capit on this head. There's no way that she should even be attempting an assisted delivery. Whatever the case may be, just follow your gut and ask questions. Just I
agree, and have courage.
Yeah.
Have courage to stick up to the doctor if you need to challenge the provider if you need to, and to go above the provider if you need to. That is our responsibility as a nurse.
Yep. So we'll follow up on this case when we can, when there's more information for sure. We're going to switch it into Code Brown now. I think we need to do some lightness here, something, because this was a hard topic to talk about. That's for sure.
It was.
Yeah. So we weekly now do our Code Brown Award of the Week, and that goes to somebody that's deserving of some stool. Somebody's just done something that's just not okay. It's not good.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And maybe they deserve a special prize. So Erica's going to award somebody a Code Brown Award. Who's getting it this week?
I am. Mine this week actually goes to a large group of people.
Oh.
And so I would like to dedicate this week's Code Brown Award to all of the Pennsylvania nursing leadership that went publicly against HB 106, the Safe Staffing Act, and against safe staffing ratios. And we all know from the letter that came out that there was it 300 plus nurse leaders of varying degree on there. And they definitely are deserving of the Code Brown Award.
Anybody that would go against safe staffing ratios deserves some diarrhea or just big mess.
Just a big case of C. diff. Yep.
Good choice, Erica. Good choice on this. Well-deserved award for them. We will get each and every one of them a trophy. Because
watch your mail. It's on the way.
Thanks a lot, Pennsylvania leadership. Way to go. Way to stick it to the nurses. We really appreciate it. All right, so that ends this Nurses Uncorked podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.
Cheers.